So you may have heard and seen the stories about what's going on right now in the condo market in Toronto, where they have just overbuilt to the point where now people who, of course, may have bought these as an investment are finding out their stuff they bought, the condos they own, are actually worth less than what they paid for them. They're also very difficult to rent. In the case of Toronto, from what I've seen, a lot of this has to do with the fact that these units in these buildings that just kept going up and up and up are very, very small. So they're really not for a family. They don't have a second bedroom. They're basically, some of them just, barely 500 square feet. And nowadays, people, thinking of having a family want to move into a place like that where they have some room. So these places are simply not selling. In Montreal, however, even though we obviously don't have the same kind of volume as Toronto does, we're starting to see something similar. Matt Grillo of CTV filed this report yesterday.
Recent numbers from the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation show just how tough the downtown condo market is. The CMHC says 25% of recently built condos in downtown and Griffintown would now sell at a loss. And what if they decide to rent out the unit? The CMHC says the majority of landlords would not cover their expenses. Real estate broker Amy Assad says there are a number of reasons, like a ban on foreign investors, not to mention oversupply, with a lot of units looking exactly the same. According to the CMHC, Montreal faces many of the same challenges as Toronto. For Montreal, it results in a lot of downtown condos sitting on the market.
So that's Matt Grillo's report from CTV, and he kept saying the word downtown. He mentioned Griffintown in there as well. Situation not the same once you move out of the downtown core. So Francis Cortellino is a market insight specialist at CMHC, Canada Mortgage and Housing, and he is on the line. Mr. Cortellino, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Let me begin by asking the question. It's not unique, as I said off the top. It's happening in Toronto. It's happening to a degree here in Montreal. Yet I live in Griffintown, and they just keep putting up, even now, building after building after building. So you'd think that in a scenario like this, a developer might say, wait a sec, why would I put up a building now when I know that condo sales are slowing? Is there some kind of an answer for that?
So yeah, Montreal is a bit different than Toronto in that case, that a lot of the structures being built in the last few years in Montreal have been rental and not condos. So they've been marketed as rental condos, but actually they're purpose-built rental structures. So it's two different markets. So they're trying to rent out those units to students or temporary workers from abroad or people living alone. So the market is different. In Toronto, is that the case that they were building a lot of condos even in the recent years, and the rental starts were quite slow. And when investors bought those units during the pandemic, they wanted maybe to rent them or sell them afterwards. But with the high interest rate environment that we were in, they were stuck with those units. And this is why we had all that rental condos being offered in the Toronto market, because investors were kind of stuck with those units.
So now we're in a different interest rate environment where, the interest rates have been coming down, of course, now for a while. Yet even with that, from that report, the suggestion is they're tough to sell or rent in Montreal.
Yeah, exactly. I would say that downtown Montreal, maybe the life in downtown Montreal is not the same that it was before the pandemic. So maybe it's still hard to attract new citizens in downtown Montreal. It's a bit more difficult. And as well, there's a challenge of affordability. So yes, interest rates are a bit lower, but those condos were built during the pandemic, and a lot of them had maybe higher construction costs during that time. So those units are quite expensive. And the main challenge that they are facing, I would say, condo builders right now is that the same condo with the same square footage is less expensive on the resale market. So a condo bought maybe 5-10 years ago would be less expensive than this new condo in downtown Montreal. So people will go to the more affordable option. They will buy it on the resale market and not buy it in those new condos. Mm-hmm. And condo builders are stuck with that inventory because it's too expensive for a lot of builders, and it's cheaper on the resale market.
Yeah, which again kind of goes to my question. Maybe it's not fair to ask, for an answer here, but if that's the case, and the ones from 5 or 10 years ago represent better value, how are these buildings still going up condo after condo in that part of town?
So that's the thing. It's mostly rental starts. So people won't buy those units. They will rent them out. So there's only one owner for the old structures, and it's going to rent all the units.
Oh, okay.
So it could be institutional investors by doing the developments, but they are not condos. So they're not selling those units. They're renting them out. So the difference between Toronto and Montreal is mostly there. We were doing a lot of rental starts in the last few years, not a lot of condos. But in Toronto, they were still doing those condos and trying to sell them.
So I would ask, though, with respect to affordability, even if you're not buying them or you're the developer to sell them and you're going to rent them, rents have gotten much more expensive. We know that already. Do you foresee that being a problem as well, even if they are just rental units?
Yeah, so it's a bit difficult to rent them because there's a lot of competitions right now in downtown Montreal and everywhere in Montreal. So there was a lot of rental starts. So people have the options now to rent maybe a condo or rent a new rental unit that was built in the last 2-3 years. So there's a lot of competition. So this is why you see a lot of incentives on the market right now for condos, rental condos or normal rental units with 1 month free, parking is free. So you've got all those incentives to try to attract new tenants because there's so much supply on the market in some areas of Montreal.
Yeah, is your understanding as well, just like I mentioned this off the top in Toronto, where the units that were built were so small, like, barely bachelor apartments, but now, of course, people want more space. People think of moving to an area, maybe having a family. Is that going to be the situation in Montreal from what you understand as well?
So, yeah, square footage has decreased over the last few years in Montreal as well for condos, especially in downtown. Units are getting smaller and smaller because with those high construction costs, builders are trying to put some units that wouldn't be too much expensive. But once again, there's often a lot of people that are living alone or students, temporary workers from abroad. So you always add those people who would maybe rent or buy those units in the past. So I would say that at the moment, the problem is maybe the affordability is a problem. And once again, if you want to buy this unit, you can have something less expensive on the resale market. And this is where people were gonna go to buy that unit, and they won't buy that new unit that is quite more expensive.
I will ask as well, one of the things mentioned in the report that I played off the top is the fact, of course, now that people who are looking off-island are finding better deals there as well. Obviously, the farther you get out of downtown, the cheaper it's going to cost. That's still the case in Montreal, I guess, as well?
Yeah, so if you look at the island of Montreal, elsewhere in the island of Montreal or in the suburbs, for the condo market, you're going to have what we call a seller's market. So you're going to have people who are going to try to buy the unit, and the price increase will be 5-6%. So price increase 5-6%, while in downtown Montreal, maybe it's 0-1%. So prices are going up in the suburbs. Elsewhere in the island of Montreal, I would say where it's a bit more difficult, it's really downtown Montreal in the Griffintown area, where there's a lot of supply of condos. Yeah. And it's more difficult to sell them.
Yeah, and just as a final question, the other thing mentioned is this idea, the government, of course, deciding to step in and not allow foreign investors to buy here. There was something mentioned there as a reason as well, perhaps why without that money, without those foreign investors, you're not seeing, some of these, numbers that we saw years before selling. You believe that's the case as well?
So we have imperfect data on, I would say, foreign investors. But when the data what we have, it's only in some project that it was maybe popular. Mm-hmm. In some other projects in downtown Montreal, there wouldn't be a lot of foreign investors. There would be investors from Canada, from Montreal, or for the province of Quebec buying those units. At the moment, if you look at the number of investors in the market for a condo, there's not a lot. So it's not only the foreign part, but mostly also domestic investors that are not present at the moment because they can't rent the unit. The cash flow would be negative. If they bought the unit, maybe they would sell it at a loss because it's cheaper on the resale market. So investors are not present, foreign or domestic at the moment.
Do you foresee the situation changing anytime soon in Montreal?
So it's for the condo market, we do not expect a rebound in condo starts in the next few quarters at least. Construction costs are, I would say, a challenge for builders right now with the tariffs. There's some components that they need to have, and they're more expensive because of those tariffs. And also, there's a new, in the high-rise structure, there's a new agreement between the union and the developers. So there will be an increase in the wages. So that's also going to have an impact on the total cost of a new project. So at the moment, developers are quite pessimistic about condo starts for the next few quarters because construction costs will be increasing. Okay. And once again, this is why people will go maybe on the resale market to buy that condo instead of buying a new one.
Sounds like it's about to get worse before it gets better. I thank you so much, Mr. Cortellino. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.